Tell me what a typical week looks like for you as a stewardess.
I'm a pilot for.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
My name is Laura Hayner, and I'm a Minnesota resident and a Minneapolis-based pilot for Delta Airlines.
And Miss Hayner, is that correct?
Yes.
So can you tell me what a typical work week looks like for you as a stewardess? How does
I'm a first officer for Delta.
Pardon me?
I'm a pilot for.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
I
don't know why I said that. I'm so sorry.
Our schedules vary. We get a schedule a month out for the whole month.
All right, so that's the video, and now I'm gonna do a video talking about the comments, but because that's the reason that I want to show you the video, to talk about people's critical recognition.
Critical recognition. Recognition and appreciation of the nature and limits of the thinking apparatus, especially when founded in an understanding of evolutionary biology and neuropsychology. Example, you better recognize.
This could be considered a textbook example of what? Basically what happened is he has an it in his mind, like most people do, associating men with being pilots and women with being flight attendants, especially older men, because that was the association. Actually, I bet that is still the association. It's not like 50% of pilots are women and like 50% of flight attendants are men. So we all have, and for good reason, and if in aviation and a woman, then flight attendant. I say it's for good reason. Look, we have it's that were good enough that we evolved with. They're not 100% true all the time. It's just a fair enough thing. And to be honest, I think that even today, maybe, I don't know, there's a lot of male flight attendants, but so I really don't know. But I think for most of the recent history of aviation, you can take all the history, but you can say all the history of this I don't know. Anyway, that rule would help you out. If it's a woman in aviation, she's a flight attendant. If it's a man in aviation, he's a pilot. Those two rules. And by the way, you'd probably have another rule. If he's a gay man in aviation, steward. If he's a straight man in aviation, pilot. And of course this is going to be wrong a lot of the times. But it's also understandable why the brain, which is trying to learn patterns and so on, would have that in it. Okay, so that it already existed in his mind. And then what in-livered was her status as a pilot. Unfortunately, that in livery didn't... See, this is what the word, actually this works as well. This is also, I think, what the word could be used for. But so we need a word for, when we're talking about a situation in which we're talking about, humans tend to think things come in and then produce reactions. But there's so much stuff going on in here that you can say something to me and I can respond like you said something completely different because of what's happening in here. So I want a word, because basically this thing that was already inside, surlivered, the thing that had just been in-livered.
Surliver. To win out against another it. To ex-liver in the place of another it. Particularly the expected or normal it. In-liver. To be input to the system. The perceptions, sensations, and informations that enter the system.
So we had this information of that she's a pilot. That was in-livered. He heard it. And then he is asking the question. Then when a call was put on his mind, what's her job? Maybe both responded. Both the recent in livery, she's a pilot, but then, you know what responded harder, what surlivered that? What surlivered the new information was the old information. Sometimes it can be old information, you know, it happens all the time where we apply a generality to a single case, so we don't see exceptions, you know. So what would we call it? Or how would we describe? So even though it wasn't originally, we can sort of talk about endogenous. Yeah, so we could have something intralivers. That just means it's one it can intraliver, meaning communicates with another it.
Intraliver. Communication between it.
So are we gonna say it's an endoit that surlivered the in-livery? So the in-livery came in, but didn't get much attention. The endoit, the one that was already in there, and it kind of, You can kind of imagine it as swooping as, what's the word? Usurping? Usurpus. Sir liver means like usurp. Okay. We have things called foundits and we have things called writs.
Found it. An it that predates critical recognition or a given age, likely from evolution or early childhood. Writ. An it, or description of an it, that has been habited since the system's achievement of critical recognition, and with the intention of making the system more coherent, moral, or reasonable.
Foundits are things that already existed here, but that's like things written in from your genes in your childhood. And then your writs are the things that you have written in or tried to with intention and focus and education and value, good values. Being an erisic. Ideally, we could. Obviously, it's always nice to invent a new word, but ideally, it'd be better if we could use something that we already have in the vocabulary. Can't just be always making up new words. Endeavory, endo, and endotit. Because we need a consonant. So we can definitely say there are such things. Or can we use found it and writ here? So like the in livery was surlivered by a found it. The association. It's not necessarily from childhood. It could have been from during his life. I mean, likely his age. He was only in his 50s or 60s. So it was no, what am I talking about? Yeah. I mean the association just got stronger throughout his life. And it's not at 50 that his brain's gonna be like, oh shit, we gotta recalibrate our generalizations. That needs to be a less strong generalization. When we were a kid, every woman who was in aviation was every woman who was on a plane, who was working on a plane was a flight attendant, and every man was a pilot. But now it's like 40-60 or 30-70 or whatever. So we have to nuance that. We have to habit that.
Habit. 1. Strengthening of an it, based on Donald Hebb's Hebbian learning, the theory that the more a synapse is active, the stronger it becomes and more likely a future activity. 2. Affecting the strength of an it, perhaps augmenting, perhaps abating, perhaps both. Pi. 1. To inhibit an it or decrease the likelihood of its livery in the given moment. 2. To practice reducing in it, decreasing its livery strength over time. Synonym, unhabit.
Oh yeah, pi, perfect. I mean, we don't need endo anything. You know what? Endo it, I also don't like the sound of it. No, this can just be for the hardcore ones. We're gonna call it an endoit. Like, it's the en passant. Actually, I could imagine there being many of these. Like Deuce and Ajax. But it's the en passant of chess. Endoit, so it's just the word we've been saying. Endo it. So the prefix endo, and then the it. But then we pronounce it French and endoit. Endoit. I mean an endoit. Endoit. Yeah. And it unrelated to recent in liveries. So something that's already in there. I found it, that's further back, you know. Of course, there could be a spectrum. You could say a high or low what? High or low something for how recent the it is. So high, let's have it refer to the past, and low refer to new things. Obviously, we can't just say that's a high it and that's a low it. So that's a high. Obviously, every it is an endoit, because I mean, you have in liveries, but then anything that doesn't exist outside of the skull is now an it. Well, not outside skull, outside the, let's say, the brain. It's all in here, right? Information doesn't exist out here and then come inside. It's here, it hits us like this, and then we represent it inside. So it's not necessarily logical, quote unquote, but it's language. So if you talk about a high endoit, endo doesn't really do anything there. It's just that we don't want to say a high it. And that already kind of means like a high level it, stuff like that. But then you're just saying, why are you saying high and low? Then why don't you just say an old endoit and a new endoit? I mean, look, there's an integration process, bro. Although we're not integrated, information does get integrated, meaning it does get kit with other things in here. Not everything, but other things. Kit, of course, meaning connected to.
Kit, to be connected to be a part of the network discussed.
You know, a recent in livery isn't gonna be very kit yet. And that's one way that we can describe his association. That was a high kit association. High kit association.
Slap, to trigger in its livery. Antonym, pulse.
And a hard slap, because it has when it's activated, when it's slapped, it slaps hard. So it's high kit, meaning it's very connected, which makes it easy to get slapped. And then when it's slapped itself, it slaps hard. So it's a high kit hard slap. So you could imagine a rubric. I mean, a table, and you could talk about voices as being high kit and low kit. Things that we just learned are low kit. Things that we learned a long time ago maybe are low kit. Things that we think about all the time and learned a long time ago are going to be high kit. Things that are going to be coming to mind easily, that are going to be real well connected. I think this is something that, yeah, that's true, right? Seems true, but I don't really know. So we should talk to ChatGPT. And then we have hard slap. High kit, hard slap. And then we can have low kit, soft slap. But then what about abbreviating? Hard kit, hard slap. Low kit, light slap. Light slap. There you go. So now you can be like, oh, yo, that it is LKHS. That's low kit. But if you slap that voice in me, bro, it's going to slap hard. Like some people their anger might sort of be low kit, hard slap. Or at least this is maybe how people tend to think of themselves. They don't get angry easily, so their anger aren't super kit, where it's, connected to a whole bunch of different other feelings and thoughts and so on. But then it livers hard when it does get slapped. So you have LKHS, HKLS, LKLS, and HKHS. Now, his association for pilots and flight attendants, it is not super kit, right? It's pretty low kit, probably. It's not a lot of times that gets play. But it doesn't matter how kit it is in this situation, as long as it's kit, as long as it's connected to something, so it can be slapped. Unlike the recent in livery, which is basically just not even kit. Like the information got in there and it's connected to like very little. So we won't. But it's kit though, the association, and it's definitely a hard slap. When you see, we can tell from him, because he had just heard her say pilot, and still that association's what X-livered, is what Sir-livered that information. So we know it's hard slap, his thing. And then by the way, if you're not kit, you can't be. How can you be low kit and hard slap? We talked about the anger thing, right? Oh, right, but you can't be no kit and hard slap because, well, we're talking about kit as far as the input. So you can be, I guess. I mean, you can't have, not for other reasons. But anyway, he's thinking about his questions and so on. And it's a kind of a formality when you have people introduced. So that was already slapping. That association was already slapping. And it may have even been, it probably was in his documentation. She didn't need to tell him that. So actually, it probably wasn't even that recent of an in livery. He probably read it there must have been documentation, right? But still, because he does, for instance, here's the thing. If he had critical recognition, when he saw that he'd be interviewing a female pilot, he would have gone, oh shit, I gotta be careful because I know I have a hard slap association, because who doesn't? Especially a man of my age. So I need to now habit that. I need to resit that.
Resit. To change a system's its or their interliveries.
And I need to make sure that I don't make a fool of myself up there, because I see here she's a pilot, and that's likely not to really liver or to get Sir-livered by, an old it. So we still don't have a term for that. Yeah. The in livery, because if it's not kit, then we can still kind of just refer to it as an in livery if it's not very kit, right? So let's say he read it in the document. Of course, we don't know the details. I don't know whether his whole line of questions involved knowing that she's a pilot. In which case, gosh, that was a hard slap. Because that was more than just an in livery. That was kit that she was a pilot. And if anybody asked him, maybe. Because we don't know. So if anybody asked him, hey, by the way, just what does she do for a living? He'd say, she's a pilot. I bet that's how it would happen. But then because of he was focused on, I don't know. But that association was able to slap in a Sir-liver. He was focused, but if he had critical recognition, he would have known, I need to be super focused on making sure I address her as a pilot. But, well, humans, or if you're watching this in the future, humans just couldn't understand that. Like, no human would be like, in my time, yo, I have a sexist association, and knowing this information isn't going to be enough to make sure that sexist association never comes out, because that's not how the brain works. The brain likes to cut corners. Even if he had it in there that she's a pilot, if he's focused on sort of how to formulate this question in other regards, or if he's self-conscious or something. What was I saying? If he's self-conscious enough, then of course, even though that information's in there, when he's at that point in the question where he has to clarify what he means, what's a day in the life? Maybe it was just the last few words, honestly. Maybe that got him picturing a woman doing her job in the plane. And that's where the association was able to get back in there. And that's when the association livered that sexist association. That could have been it. He was even but he was going to say pilot, but he hadn't yet practiced visualizing her and her job yet. So he knows that she's a pilot, but once he imagines her doing her work, gosh, I think for every brain in the world, you imagine a woman in a plane and you imagine them walking down the aisles. And also, we don't even see the cockpit often. So if you imagine, okay, I'm on a plane, there's a woman working. Of course, she's a flight attendant. Now, if you're talking to a man, though, when we think of men on planes, we don't see them. We think of them as just those guys in the cockpit. I mean, the straight ones. So when we think of men working on planes, I imagine suitcase people. Oh, wait, no, they're not on the plane. So where the fuck are men working on the plane? Oh, yeah, of course, the cockpit. There are men in there, right? So the image of a flight attendant would actually come. In fact, so if it were a gay man, it would have been the same thing. And honestly, even if it were straight, like a pretty boy, or just someone who takes care of themselves, and let's just say has like maybe my pitch, could happen too. Less likely. So this has been great. So we're gonna use the word Endoit whenever we need to contrast between an in livery or something at least that's not very kit, and something that we know is kit, and that may predate. Yeah, so it's Endoit because it's more endo than the new one because it's been there longer, seniority. All right, that works for me. Thank you for your hanging out. Thanks for I couldn't have done it without you. All right, let's just because I don't know when I'm gonna make a video about the comments. So who do I remember? First comment, pretty good. Textbook example of unconscious bias. The thing is, I'm not sure that this person actually knows really what bias means, or whether she's using it like every other human does. In which case, like, she would probably say she doesn't have this unconscious bias. She'd probably define bias as almost an opposition to women or something. In this case, a preference for men, a commitment to the idea that women are stupid or something like that. Some bias that she doesn't have. But no, we all have. That's why let's avoid the word bias. Let's just talk about this mallet. Honestly, it's kind of a bonnet, but that's why we've defined mallet as meaning not just generally useful, but also in the given situation. So although an association of women are blank and blank and blank, could be a bonnet if you ever had to participate in some guessing game. It is a mallet for progress for society, if we propagate that. And it's a mallet in this case. It is not adapted to this situation where the woman is not a flight attendant. And also, I like that comment about the unconscious bias from a psychology point of view. But I am now thinking, as I talk about it, that I feel like, what if it was like an insult from her? Like, oh gosh, people have unconscious biases. So anyway, so I wish that guy, I wish these commenters had more critical recognition. I mean, the top one, I don't really know her story, and so she seems to have the best, besides perhaps the pilot, who's been a main character, but we don't know anything about her critical recognition. Anyway, then there are a few different comments that mounted that said, oh, he did that on purpose. A few who saw him as unredeemable for this slip. Also, there were comments that So there was a comment that quoted people as saying, couldn't he have just made a mistake? And I want to respond to people, so I think two people. People who, um, might think that it's a innocent, harmless mistake, and B, think that it's an evil mistake. And it is neither. Um, it's certainly not an evil mistake. We know that the brain is not integrated. We know that this does not mean that he thinks that women can't be pilots. You know, hear people say stuff like that. It does not mean that. It does not mean that if his daughter is like, I want to be a pilot, he'd say, no, you're better off being a flight attendant. It does not mean that. And it certainly doesn't tell us anything about his morality. And yeah, he didn't do the work before that thing to practice saying pilot, but neither does anybody yet. Nobody has critical recognition. Just remembered a black friend of mine who like believes in God, so hasn't really done the work on that programming, but expects white people to have done work on their racist programming that he's never had to do. And it's like, okay, hold them accountable. What have you done? I mean, maybe he's done it on something, but in high school, he had questions. He was kind of on the fence. I mean, you know, he grew up really religious, but had his doubts, and he's basically still there. So it's been like 20 years. So, and that's fine. That's fine. You know, I'm just saying, if we're mad about it, then I'm mad about it. But if we're not mad about humans not doing the work about their bad programming, then we're not mad about it. But I am mad about it, but for everybody. But don't y'all be mad at each other for it unless you're mad at yourselves for it too. That's all I'm saying. So he right. So it's not evil. I think I've explained well enough why that association would exist. I mean, and if I haven't in this video, then look at what evolution is. I mean, like, our body is this way because this is what tended to function, what tended to be good enough. The brain changes more than the body does, and it's got these mechanisms of learning, and those mechanisms work the way that they do based on evolution. And I think I'm maybe getting sidetracked, but can I move on? I mean, I don't know how to convince you. I guess just identify some people that you're very close with who you think are like not sexist, not at all racist, good people, whatever. Not evil like that piece of shit. Okay. There's no way. So you're just gonna have to prove it to yourself. There's no way that you're not catching them slip up. That you know, the worst is among the left, it's when we misgender someone and don't notice. And the worst is if you're not queer yourself and you misgender someone, right? I pay a lot of attention to that. And I remember one time my girlfriend was mad at me and she goes, "You were just talking the whole time. You were monologuing." I was like, everybody kept asking me questions. I thought they wanted to hear about the mind. Sorry. And also, you misgendered her. Fuck, no, it was somebody else. So I'm misgendering them now because I got confused about who this story was about. Okay. You misgendered him. Oh, shit. It's like, why didn't you say that then? Or, just subtly, like, correct me? Or if, I don't know what the person wanted. Anyway, and there's no way I did it multiple times. She, like, quoted me. She's like, you said, and then blah, blah, blah. I mean, you only did it once. It was a mistake, but still, you misgendered them. I was talking about the brain. And, I'm not fucking blind or deaf, so it's not like the information that he's a he just comes in and then that's all that happens. No, I'm still a brain. I keep hearing this not male voice. I keep seeing these female features. I am trying. I'm not saying that we shouldn't hold each other accountable when we misgender. I mean, that's how we get better at it. But I just don't think we should be upset. Depends on what the person, whether the person cares about it or not. If the person doesn't care about it, if the misgendering person doesn't care about gendering correctly, that's a whole other thing. So we've got this end of it. What were we talking about? Right, it wasn't evil. Also not harmless. Slips of the tongue kind of aren't real. Jokes kind of aren't real. I mean, and I say kind of, really, really, I mean kind of, because there are lots of jokes that have no piece of truth to them. Or even if part of the brain believes in it, most of the brain doesn't, and so the person doesn't see themselves as believing in it. And functionally does not. Or what's the word I was going to say? Anyway. But slips of the tongue are different, because jokes, that can be like, anyway. A slip of the tongue is different. Doesn't mean that you believe it to be true on the inside. It could just be two its that combine to make some gibberish that neither its actually agrees with. In this case, that was not the case. In this case, there was an it that believed, quote unquote, there was an it that was like, oh, female features, therefore flight attendant. So we can say there was an it that believed that women are flight attendants. There was another it that was like, this woman, if it's this woman, then pilot. We don't even know whether that was really in there or not. Certainly not whether that was kid or not. In fact, all that might have exist is that woman's job is pilot, but it might not even exist beyond those words in his mind. So if you asked him, that's what I was saying earlier, if you asked him what's her job, he might say pilot, because he might do a call back to the memory of what was said, right? But in the case of when he was asking a question, he wasn't thinking back to what she said. The brain takes shortcuts, and so he was relying on, not relying on, he just went with, whatever livered. And yeah. So it is neither harmless nor evil. It is something that needs to be recognized. We need critical recognition, and then it's something that I mean, I don't even know whether that that actually needs to be revisited. Because, like, what would that be replaced with? You can't replace it with women are pilots. And the brain can't have, by the way. Yeah, let's end the video on this important note. You are lying to yourself if you believe that your brain can have no assumptions, no associations. That you can be like, I hear the word doctor and I make zero assumptions. That there are no images that come to mind that my brain then supposes. And that's the thing about, like, gendering people or getting their sexuality right. We have this stupid expectation that humans be able to just, like, walk up to someone and have just no idea whether they're gay, straight, binary, what kind of, just have no idea. And just be like, I'm not going to assume. I have no idea. That's just not possible. Now, maybe a workaround for that is to just put all options. So the brain could, when I see a human, I picture feminine, whatever. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but I picture both. So then what we can do is have an association between the word pilot and just picture a group of pilots. Some women in there. So if you do this, yeah. And that's great because there are a lot of stock photos of that. In fact, right now I feel like I'm picturing a group of, I don't know, maybe they're flight attendants. Anyway, so yeah, we could have it so that if pilot then man, and if pilot, or no, I guess it would be if pilot, man and woman. Yeah. If human being, man and woman. I'm just so then we just assume that everyone is just in the middle, basically. Yeah, that the brain could do. Just imagine no hair, no features, just a body that's somehow ambiguous. Flat-chested, just nothing between the legs, just the uniform. Just imagine the uniform. I don't know. That could be part of the retraining. But in any case, so that's another thing with critical recognition. You know that you have to replace your assumptions. You have to replace your associations. You can't just be like, oh, that's a bad association, therefore I'm not going to do it. The brain's going to go, hey, look, we work with associations, and we are all about learning. I have an association here that I've learned. I'm not going to throw it away for free. You can think of it that way.